Hello and welcome to the Lion Show. I'm your host, your favorite business coach, Robert Lyon. Today, we have the great privilege to talk to Sheryl Anjanette. She's a imposter syndrome coach. She's a peak performance coach. She's just an amazing lady, and I'm just excited to have her on the show today. She's an author. So Sheryl, why don't you kind of introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you're up to?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, by the way, for having me with you. And a lot of people know me as sort of the imposter syndrome girl or guru or whatever G you want to pick. And that's just because I've really steeped myself in this topic of imposter syndrome to really figure out the formula to get past it, which a lot of people say you can't do. A lot of people will tell you you just have to live with it, but I'm stubborn. That is my middle name, and I don't believe that. And so I wrote a book and taking people through this process, which I finally figured out, and it really does work to get people past imposter syndrome. So a lot of people that hear me speak know me under this umbrella of the imposter syndrome, but I also work with self-sabotage, burnout, peak performance, and really anywhere where mindset and business intersect to help. Yeah.
Well, imposter syndrome is huge because it's probably cost people millions of dollars, all over the world, and just all kinds of different things are from holding themselves back. It's like we build all that, we do all this work as an entrepreneur, or as a business owner, or just anybody in doing work. And then we either self-sabotage ourselves, or we don't think we're worth getting paid the big bucks, or we think about ourselves with the imposter syndrome. We don't get out of our comfort zone because we don't think we're worth it. I feel like that's kind of a big take. So what is your theory, I guess, on imposter syndrome? Because I've actually been talking to quite a few people on the podcast about, either authenticity, right? Because you have to be 100% authentic, but then also if you want to sell a business, you kind of got to grow into the next version of yourself, right? And then to become the next version of yourself, there's a lot of imposter syndrome you kind of have to get over. So I just kind of interested in your take on it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say, wouldn't it be great if we could really quantify the costs of imposter syndrome? Wouldn't it be great if we could really see what we missed and see that on paper? I mean, that's the part.
It'd be traumatizing.
It would be traumatizing, but it could be,
liberating too.
Yeah, hopefully motivating at some level. But yeah, so what I like to do is really first define what imposter syndrome is, because I find there are a lot of myths out there and a lot of misunderstandings. So imposter syndrome is simply a psychological pattern where someone feels like they're not good enough, or as you said, Robert, worthy or deserving, in spite of their accomplishments, So there's a disconnect between our actual accomplishments, or let's say, call it reality, and our perception, right? The feelings that we have. So somebody experiencing imposter syndrome, can be out there. Most people experiencing imposter syndrome are highly accomplished. I mean, we're talking celebrity CEOs, senior executives, not just the beginner. And they're out there doing their thing. They're pushing past their fear. They're doing it anyway. All the things that a lot of people say are the cure, they're doing those things. And they still feel like they're not good enough. The feeling is like they're going to figure out, I'm not as good as they thought I was. Any moment, they're going to see that I'm really not worth what they're paying me, or I'm not worthy or deserving. They're going to see that I'm just faking it, or I'm a fraud. And it's not that we resonate with that word fraud. It's because it doesn't really mean you're an imposter or you're a fraud, but we feel like we've put on this mask.
Right.
And so that leads to a lot of anxiety, internalized anxiety, rumination, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of overthinking, overcommitting, overdoing, overpleasing, overwhelm that is unnecessary.
So here's kind of my theories, I guess, on overcoming imposter syndrome. I'm someone who just kind of like puts their head down and just run through walls, though. So I'm kind of ridiculous when it comes to it. It's like when I was younger, I felt like, if nobody would tell me no or anything different, then I could do anything. Right. And then as I got older, I built calluses, and it just hasn't quite continued. But for sales, for other things, what I've done to overcome imposter syndrome is basically make a fake identity, and just kind of like create a character in my head that says, this is who I'm going to be now during this certain situation. And then I'll try and come back to Robert, and I'll try and just be a badass for the next little thing. And I'll kind of put on a facade. I'll put on a little show, it's not just for me, it's for everybody. And it's interesting, and it's powerful though, because how do you recommend people, I guess, get over imposter syndrome? How do they break out of their comfort zone and become who they truly could be?
Yeah. So first, let me just kind of speak to that, because what you were just talking about, Robert, is called the alter ego. And Todd Herman wrote a great book called Alter Ego. I highly recommend it. And I think alter ego is a strategy that works. It's like having a lot of these strategies really work. It's not a cure for imposter syndrome, but it's a powerful strategy that can get you when you're a little nervous. You have to go out and appear, give a presentation, whatever it is. Like, you'll laugh at this one, but when I was learning golf, which I'm still learning golf, do we ever stop learning? It's a 4-letter word. So yeah. So as I continue to learn golf, what I do, and you're just going to crack up, is I go up to the tee and I imagine that I'm Tiger Woods.
Yeah. That's what you got.
Wrong gender, wrong color, wrong everything doesn't fit me. Like, who am I to be? But I actually will be up there and I'll think I'm Tiger Woods. And I mean, the cameras are on me and I can see all the people lined up watching me about to hit. And I'm like, peak performance. It's time to be ready. Snap into it. You're Tiger. You can do this. And I hit it about 50 yards, but
find your inner tiger. Yeah.
But that alter ego is a great strategy, because the thing is, we don't want to, if you are, and not everybody's interested in getting past this, because it takes some work. You asked, how do you do it? Not everybody has the belief either. You have to start with the belief that you can get past it. You can't, you're not just kind of going to get better or get through it. You have to just be stubborn like you are and like I am, and say, you know what, I'm going to let go of this anxiety. I need to figure this piece out. I need to get better sleep. I need to be able to flow in life. This is my life. This is my peace of mind. I deserve it. And I'm going to figure this piece out. And the way I do it, which is a little different, there's some great people speaking and writing about imposter syndrome out there, and I'm a big fan of all of them. But what I noticed is that I didn't see anybody approaching this holistically. And perhaps I see this differently because I am also a practitioner. I'm an integrative hypnotherapist, NLP.
Oh, cool.
Call me a master or not. I don't call myself a master. Sometimes I use that term because other people do, but I studied it to that level and I practice it, and some energy stuff. And so I've learned how to deal with the inner. There are two ways to do this. And the truth is, I think we need both. Working from the outside, it's almost like peeling back an onion, right? Right. Or talk therapy, or just kind of working with strategies, creating new habits, getting better. But to get to that yoke, that inner peace, we almost need to do the deep dive, or we're there for years, or like I was decades with this stuff. And so what I have is a holistic approach. We do the inner work as well as the outside, inside out, outside in. And just at a very high level, when you do the deep dive, what you find is people will say, well, you're going to start to tune in on your thoughts. That's good. That's true. And your self-talk, starting to pay attention to, what that dialogue is between the ears, which is often a bully in the brain, right? And then you start to go below that, like peel back the layers. And what's below that? Well, below that are our beliefs, right? And a lot of people feel like our beliefs are our beliefs. I believe that. I've always believed that. That's not changing. And that itself is a belief. So the first belief we have to start with is that beliefs are changeable. That's called a growth mindset.
Right.
And if you go, and the reason they are is that if you go now even below the beliefs, you start to go, okay, this is This is looking at this with a lot of curiosity. Like, what's
Right.
below that? What's below that? One more question, one more question. Below that are our experiences. And it's not so much the experiences that we've had, but the meaning we give them, the interpretation we had at that age and at that stage. At that age and at that stage. So think about it. You know, you think about those imprint years, what behaviorists and psychologists call the imprint years, the 3 to 7 is usually what we're talking about. Our brain is still developing, and really our brains are always developing, but you know, a male brain is not fully formed until their late 20s, actually, and female a little sooner. But you know, we are like these squishy emotional beings. We're just sponges. We're taking it all in, right? Yeah,
We
right.
forget
So
it, but we are.
we are, right? So we're like 3 years old and say something happens. Well, will a 3-year-old interpret the dark the same way a 12-year-old would? Probably not. Will they have the same fear? Will they have the same response if mommy and daddy close the door and it's dark in the room, right? Or the nightlight goes out, or what have you. So it's at that age and at that stage. And so if I'm a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old and I do something and mommy gets mad and I think, ooh, I'm a bad girl, I'm not good enough. Well, there are 2 things that will perpetuate that. One is that our minds are wired to make us right. So our brains are wired. We look for evidence.
Wait, say that again. Our minds are wired to make us right. That's pretty
Yes.
powerful.
Super powerful. And just like, look at the world right now with all the divisiveness. And it's like, can't they see what I see? Like, nobody's seeing the same thing. But our minds, it's a mental filtering. We are wired to look for evidence and to even filter out other evidence so that we can be right. And that's kind of this way that our brain hasn't really evolved. You know, it's that it's part of our protection. You know, I need to be right. The other thing is that our minds are wired to look at the negative. We have a negative bias automatically. And that also comes from the primitive brain, the brain that says, stay safe, look for threats. So we have these 2 things going, kind of coming at us. So I'm going around and I say, ooh, there's more evidence. I'm not good enough. Ooh, you know, there's more evidence. I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving, or my voice doesn't matter, or I don't matter.
Yeah.
You know, who am I to raise my hand, right? And then add to this, I want to just say, I have to say this actually. I'm sorry, just moved the screen. I have to say this actually, because you brought up something that is so interesting and important for people to understand, but most people don't go down this path. You talked about you wanting to just go to the finish line, get that solution, just figure it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to just talk for a moment about gender and male and female brains. And we kind of see this now. There's a bell curve, and this is not like this is always every woman, every man, every little girl, every little boy. But with the bell curve, the higher averages, generally speaking, you see men and women's brains are very, very different. They're very, very different. First of all, the hippocampus, which is the memory center in a woman's brain, is much larger than a man's brain. I think it's something like, don't quote me on this, but it's something like 25 or 30% larger. That's the memory center. That's why women remember everything.
Right.
And yeah, you have to be careful there. And then the other thing is that there are many more connections, and you can see this on a scan, the neurons connecting from the prefrontal cortex to the hippocampus. So if you put a woman's brain versus a man's brain on the scan, you know, you can see this activity. That's why women are always thinking, right? We're always thinking. It's like we say to a man, what are you thinking about? And he says, nothing. And we're like, are you kidding me? There's no way. And of course, he's not thinking about anything. I mean, he's really, yeah, I mean, nothing. But so it's just different. So when you were talking about, you said, I just want to get to the finish line. Men tend to have bell curve there. more what they call convergent thinking, and they want to get to the solution. It's why you see that little boys playing sports and they just want to duke it out, or they can go into the boardroom and they can beat up on each other and go out and have a beer. And women could never do that.
Yeah.
But we are looking at things from every possible direction and what's going to happen. We're what you call divergent thinkers. And when you bring those two together, it's really, really powerful. That's a little bit of a tangent, but that is just to say that I want to bring it back to imposter syndrome, is that men and women experience imposter syndrome almost equally. Interesting, right? Like a lot of people think it's a female phenomenon. Not true. But they do experience it differently. And part of that is conditioning, but some of that is just that we are physiologically and biologically different.
There's a lot to unpack there. So I want to go back to the holistically healing or fixing yourself. So this just from my thinking and trying to solve a problem, get to the solution, right? We're just talking about, do you think that when you're having your imposter syndrome, you should take a minute to note all the fears that you have and maybe write them down or map them out, clearly see why are these coming up? Are these the things that I'm really struggling with? Are any of these even true? Because like you said, we talk ourselves, I have talked myself out of a dozen businesses that I've started. I've just been oh, we're almost there. And then I'm oh, this isn't going to work, and I find all these reasons just to kill it. And then it has a lot to do with imposter syndrome or the next step or something like that. We're kind of our own worst enemies, I guess. But what do you think that's a good way, or what are your ways of more just kind of going into the holistic healing your imposter syndrome?
Well, what you're talking about, what I'm hearing is how you self-sabotage.
Right. That's imposter syndrome's best friend.
Yeah. And these are the things that then we look back. So, we can talk about what imposter syndrome is. We can talk about where it came from, but where the rubber meets the road is how is it affecting us? What are the observable behaviors? Right. And so we go back out, we know it starts with beliefs and they inform our thoughts and our self-talk, and all those become patterned. They become patterned, and which means they sort of become unconscious. And we're going there, but
danger zone. Yeah.
Danger zone, right?
Yeah,
it's mysterious. It's what? Who's sabotaging me? Me? No. Why would I do that to myself? It's completely ridiculous, right?
So good to be aware of that, though. That's a good insight. So.
Yeah. And so your question is, what is the thing? And there is not a thing. So first and foremost, and this is hard for people because we all want the quick fix. We want the silver bullet. Right. And so what I think is really important is that this is not a sprint. It's a marathon, but it doesn't have to be years. It doesn't have to be decades. It's I would say about 90 days, 90 to 180 days of working on this. But it means that, you just had a very important insight observation about you. If I were to say to you, this is true for everyone, I would be lying. So what I do, and I do this in my book, but I also do this in this voyage past self-sabotage that I take people on, is we start with awareness, really understanding what this is. We don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know, even when we think we do. That's the danger, when we have our blind spots.
Yeah. That's the curse of knowledge, though, too, is that when you do know something, you think everybody knows it too. So it's just kind of interesting.
Absolutely. Exactly. And so then the second part of this is insight. So now it's about you. So now there's this world of how imposter syndrome may be showing up. How are you experiencing it? And is self-sabotage part of that equation? Usually, yes.
Right.
I never like to use the words always or never, but let's say usually, yes. And then what are the things that it's costing you? Well, you obviously, from what I'm hearing, I won't say obviously, but from what I'm hearing as an example, and this is a good example, are saying that you get so far with certain things and then you quit, and you maybe have really good excuses for it. Like you tell yourself a good story. There's a good story you can step back. Maybe you don't reveal this to everyone. And I'm not saying you like it's just you. I think there are a lot of people that are relating to this. Is this would be me too, by the way. But it's like I got really good at storytelling. I could tell myself the best story about why that wasn't going to work. I use these sabotage bullies, and that one is experience zapping Ethel. Like, it didn't work that time, Ethel. Why are you even trying? You don't have enough experience. You have too much experience, whatever it is. But we have doubtful Dee. She's another one.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of them. But, they come up and I make fun of them and give them stupid names because they are stupid. Because they do rob us. And so what you start to do is you start to understand that insight. Okay, this is how it's happening for me. And you can have all of these: procrastinating, or I'm using distraction, or I'm competing with everyone else and comparing myself to everyone else and finding myself just, not being good enough. Maybe I find myself really creative and starting things, but then I quit because I start to actually fear less failure, but maybe some success.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Or whatever that is. Or fear of success. It's real and it's powerful. And yes, me too, is all I can say. So with that, yes, you're right. One of the really powerful strategies, and I teach how to turn fear into an ally, into a friend, instead of bringing us down and sending us in that downward spiral. But once you're aware that you tend to quit, you can do little things where you finish it, you tie the bow, and you get really good, and you land one plane at a time, and you make sure that if you're going to start something, you're going to finish it.
Right.
So you do that in small ways, so you create a new pattern in your mind, and then you check in with fear, and you say, what am I really afraid of? Let's look at it. Is it real or not? What's the worst thing that can happen? Could this be a good thing? Could this just, doubt's another one. Doubt, when people say no fear, no doubt, I say bullshit. Can I swear on your show?
Yeah, please do. Makes me feel more comfortable.
I say bullshit because it is bullshit, because we all have fear and we need fear and we should have fear. Fear is our great protector. It's wired into us. And doubt is our discernment muscle. We need doubt, or we believe the real imposters. We need that stuff. But we use them now in an adaptive way, and we check in with them, and then we keep going.
Whoa, that was a mic drop. So you check in with your fear and your doubt. I love that. That's so smart. That's great.
Yeah, because if you don't check in with them, what are they going to do?
Yeah, they're going to run wild, or they're going to sabotage you or something. like we were talking about. That's crazy. That's great. No, and I have had the epiphany. So I've started over like 25 businesses. Some of them are still doing good. I've sold some of them. Some of them have just blown up in my face. But now I have a strict rule in there that I stop and make money at a certain point, instead of just keep doing everything and keep going crazy. Like I literally have to stop. I have to like hold myself still and like just make money, just finish this thing, get to the mountaintop, don't quit, like you were talking about. So that's just a good insight, I think, for everybody out there. It's very important. So cool, man. So let's I'm still digesting everything you said, because it was just gems. Mad magnifique. But I want to talk about finding your peak performance zone now. I think that's a good pivot, and just kind of I'm interested in your take on how do we perform better? What does that mean?
Yeah. And so first of all, peak performance is always going to be tied to your state, your physical state, your emotional state, your mental, your mindset, all of these things. It's not one part of it, it's all of it, right? Peak performance means that anybody can find a moment in their life in whatever that thing is. It could be sports. It could be when you were doing a presentation or speaking. It could be when you were trying to romance someone and you said just the right thing. It can be anything, right? That moment where you were just on, you were in flow, and there was no way you were not going to get exactly what it was you were after. It wasn't even like the questions were coming up in your mind. You were in that peak state. You were there,
Yeah.
So when you are there, you want to go, and you could just do this in your mind. You can go back to that moment and put yourself there. How are you breathing?
Yeah.
How were you nourished? Have you been feeding yourself right with food and good people, good thoughts? Nourishment is not just what we digest, physically. It's what we're digesting in terms of emotions and thoughts and feelings and the people around us. How are you nourishing your mind? How are you nourishing your body? Because peak performance athletes will tell you they're out there exercising, right? They've got good, whole foods, real food, not the crap that's full of chemicals and junk that's going to throw your insides out. They take care of the vehicle, and they take care of the interior wiring, what's firing, right?
Yeah.
They've got enough fuel, so they're oxygenated, right? So when you want to be in peak performance, and this can be every moment of every day, you don't have to do it because you're running a marathon or doing a triathlon, or you're going to go out and give a big speech, keynote, or go and step up in front of a potentially great client. If you're just get your state where you understand what that state feels like and you know it, you can train yourself. And you don't have to live in peak performance or peak state. That's like living in happiness all the time. It's not real. I mean, we're human beings after all. We're not superhuman. But you can get to a place where you're like in that zone where you're in range, where if something comes up, you can go deep breath in, let me, put that a few thoughts in my mind, hit the trigger button, because triggers are not all bad. Remember, we think of trigger, we use the word trigger like we're just triggering a bad memory or triggering something that's bad. Triggers are anything from our subconscious mind that are resetting our thought, belief, our physiology, so we can create positive triggers. And I do this, we use NLP for, this piece of it, but you create those positive triggers. Anyone can do it. I mean, I tell all my husband's golf buddies that I'm going to bring them out and get their scores up if they want, and they're all like, yeah, we want that, but they haven't jumped in yet. We'll see if they do. Yeah, but you can create these positive triggers where you go up to bat, literally or figuratively, and you can hit that home run.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly. But you don't want to be too far away from it. You don't want to be like, in this negative ho-hum, woe is me, I'm hopeless, I'm never going to be good enough, and who cares about what I think, and I'm going to keep drudging through it and think you're going to be in peak performance.
So this is kind of a general question, but I love what you said there. So would you say, like, if you were to make like a philosophy for success for people's lives, that they should optimize their lives to do more things that get them in a state of flow? I know that's kind of a complicated way to say it, but is that kind of what you agree?
Yeah, flow to me does. And by the way, I have this really soft voice, and people sometimes tell me, oh, I would, I do meditation, all that. I don't do meditation, by the way. I have a hard time with meditation, but I can
do golf, which is just,
but I golf, that's better. But I have that voice. But let me just tell you, when you are in flow, it does not mean you're not being active. In fact, when you're in flow, you're active in a way where it's energizing, not depleting. Where when things come up, because they will, and they always do, we always get blocks. And sometimes it feels like it's just we're hitting a wall. We can flow through it. Like the wall dissolves, like the river flowing around, the riverbed of boulders and whatever is sticks and debris and whatever comes along. And it's just like
that's powerful.
Snap back in much faster. So it's not like we're in flow. That's why in my book, I talk about this concept. We talk about mindset a lot, but I bring you to this idea of mind flow. It's quite different because I think mindset, I use the word because it's well understood.
Right.
But again, we're creating a set point. And you're
instead of a mind flow.
When you're flowing, it's just a level above that. You're much more fluid. you're adapting more easily. You're,
Yeah.
you're not getting stuck in expectations, that are unhelpful.
I'm just curious. This is for my own personal selfish question. How has NLP kind of helped you in business and in life? Is it worth going down the rabbit hole and studying everything about it? You're not the first person I've talked to about it. I'm just curious about your take on it.
I think it's life-changing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think the things that I've done with NLP was first, and I started studying it in my 20s,
Mm.
just a few years ago.
Me too. No,
And I will say it is life-changing. And sometimes I forget how life-changing it's been for me because I've repatterned my mind.
Mm.
But the reprogramming, and to some degree, NLP was good with reprogramming too. I shouldn't say to some degree it is. Hypnotherapy is different. But when I dove into hypnotherapy, wow, that's
that like the next level up kind of.
Well, it's just all of these modalities are powerful. So it's not like one is better than the other. I'm a big believer in, integrating different modalities. So I studied multiple modalities of hypnotherapy and I integrate them with NLP. And so a lot of times when I work with clients, and I work all over the world, I just work remotely. It's
Cool.
I have sessions with people in Nigeria, Australia, Europe. It doesn't
You're able
matter.
to hypnotize them like remotely or
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. In some ways, I think it even works better than in person, believe it or not, because they don't have the distractions of being in someone else's space.
Right.
But that being said, because I also work with NLP, I can bring somebody into that hypnotic trance and I can help them with both, various modalities, but use NLP in that place as well. And so it's very, very powerful because the subconscious mind really grabs hold of that. And it's very rapid. It's very transformation. And again, when we do this, we never go, whenever I talk about hypnotherapy, I always like to say two things that I think are really, really important. One is I'm not a hypnotherapist that believes in bringing someone back into trauma. So, and I don't do that. So if somebody is worried about going back into a place that is really traumatic, we don't do that. And I don't believe in re-traumatizing, but there is a way to observe it from a third person. And the other thing is a good hypnotherapist is only a guide. It's not implanting their ideas or their messages. There's a whole portion of the first session where you want to make sure you understand what somebody's belief system is. What's their language? What are they trying to overcome? What would they like? What messages would they like? And so it needs to be done with great integrity.
Yeah. So for someone who's never done hypnotherapy out there, you would highly recommend. I mean, you're a little biased, but I want to know. I've just studied NLP, but I've never really thought about trying to go to a hypnotherapist to solve issues or problems or life traumas.
I mean, it was life-changing for me. And for my clients, I mean, I have clients, sometimes they just come to me once, one session, one and done. It's that fast, and others have been coming to me for months, but they don't have to. But each session, it's like, oh my God, it's like this epiphany. We don't even realize what's been. Well, there's 90% of our consciousness is in the subconscious mind.
Wow.
And our subconscious mind holds on to things to protect us. But if they're not expressed, they're being repressed. And, they're never fully repressed because it's like emotion, right? It's energy in motion. They end up coming out, and sometimes they come out in the form of self-sabotage, in the form of, acting like a kid, where you see somebody and we're like, is that a 12-year-old? What's going on there? Are we all acting like teenagers? We're grown ass adults. What the hell's going on? It's like, what is going on? But it's because you can't truly repress that. It comes out as disease. Yeah. It comes out as depression, anxiety. It comes out as autoimmune diseases or cancers. I mean, it's healthy to understand, express all emotion, and emotions are not good or bad. Okay, this is my belief. I'm not going to state this. I'm going to say, this is my belief. I share it. I invite you, if you like it, to take it on as yours or not.
Mhm.
But my belief is that emotions are neither good nor bad. And you might be saying, Sheryl, what do you mean? Isn't sadness a bad emotion? Isn't anger a terrible emotion? Isn't shame or blame a negative, awful emotion?
Hmm.
Well, really what they are is contracted emotions. They're dense emotions and they feel very heavy, where emotions like happiness, joy, peace, even just a neutrality, just like acceptance, they feel lighter. And you know that in your body. As soon as you say love and you think about something you love or someone you love,
Mhm.
it feels light, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about anger, it feels dense. And if you think shame, which is like the lowest one, it feels really dense. Like don't even go there, right? And yet every single human on the planet has this whole range of emotions. It's
Right.
like a symphony.
That's a very intense insight. So how do we get the heavier emotions out of our bodies or our subconscious?
Well, we give them their time in the light.
Mm.
We pull them out of the shadows and we allow them to be expressed. That can be that me at my 5-year-old saying, I don't feel pretty. I feel like everybody's laughing at me. And they may have just been laughing with me. I might have done something really, really cute.
Mhm.
And everybody burst out laughing and thought, what a cute girl. And I'm embarrassed because I was a really sensitive child. And I think everybody's laughing at me. And I'm embarrassed, and I'm ashamed. Maybe my dress wasn't as pretty as one of the other girls at the party. I'm just throwing out
Mhm.
examples. I just want you to understand that the stuff is the stuff of our imaginations.
Right.
It's not that some things weren't real. Look,
Mm.
there's a lot of abuse out there. There are people that are growing up in a way where they're either not getting something that they really need, like love or nurturing, or somebody that's really being respectful or listening to them, or they are getting things they shouldn't be getting, like abuse or neglect or their abandonment. This stuff is real and this stuff is painful. And for an emotional child, that they don't have the cognition, that they can't stop, they might say, I feel sad, or I feel confused, or I feel lonely, but their repertoire of words and expression is limited at that age. It's hard to decipher. And so it gets buried, it gets trapped, and it gets layered on, like I talked about earlier, and that becomes even heavier.
Mm.
So what I do a lot, and I don't do this with everyone, but let's say virtually everyone, there's some inner child healing. There's some just going back to that child and saying, letting that child emote,
Yeah.
like listening to them, letting them have a voice, not just talking at them, letting them express, how are you feeling? I feel afraid. I feel confused.
Mhm.
I feel like nobody loves me. I feel alone. Whatever that is, let them express that, because it's just being held in so tight. I don't feel safe. I'm scared. I'm scared. I don't feel safe. This is real, so real. And sometimes the thing that happened, when we can be there, we first just make them feel safe. We let them know that they're loved. We show them that everything worked out okay. We show them ourselves as adults and we go, you see, we turned out okay. We're
Yeah.
okay. But let's look at what really happened. You see all these people,
Mhm.
they thought you were super cute. And so they were laughing with you because you just did something that made them just smile. And can you see that they weren't laughing at you? And I'm giving that as a light example. The heavier examples aren't quite as easy,
Right.
but we let people know, we let that child know that that wasn't right.
Mhm.
Daddy should have been there for you. And we help them maybe see daddy or mommy as a small child like them. Let's see what daddy was like at 5 years old too. Let's bring daddy here at your same age or at 7 years old. Do you think he was feeling hurt too?
Mhm.
We try to help rewrite the story, diminish the intensity. I'm giving you examples. it's different for each person. It's not like
Right.
you don't know two people have the same experience. I've gone into sessions with people and they went right back into past lives, if you believe in that. And
Cool.
I'm the guide, and that's where they needed to go. And that's what we found, you know?
Stupid past lives ruining our good ones right now. Just kidding. I'm
Yeah.
just
Damn those ancestors. What the hell?
You said some amazing stuff. So I really love the idea. First, you have to find the trauma, the pain, the heavy, dense emotions, bring it to the light. And then you said express that. That's the thing. So I always thought you had to pull the emotion back up, really feel it, and then let it go. But I feel like with that heavier stuff, if you can find a way to actually express it, expressing is like getting it out of your body. Like that's
That's exactly
very
right.
powerful. And like society, people don't express themselves at all enough. You know what I mean? It's a very, very intense. That's cool. So that was a breakthrough right there.
And they get confused with how they're expressing themselves because they'll get stuck. So, you know, especially men get stuck in anger, and women get stuck in guilt or shame or blame.
Yeah.
So so I've worked with a lot of men and younger men as well, like in their 20s. And I find that when they are allowed to express, like I had one young man, he's doing amazing well. Now he's working in finance. He has a great career. He's traveling all over the world. But when we started, you know, he had some of the addictions and felt really lonely, and he didn't even know how to express the emotions. He said, I don't know how.
Right.
What do you mean emotions? And we were able to see that behind the anger was fear, you know, and behind the fear were some other emotions. And just by expressing it, he was able to lighten his whole world.
Wow.
Like I had a woman who said, it's felt for my whole life like I had this boulder in my gut. It felt so heavy and nobody could see it. Nobody knew. We had one session. She kept saying, Sheryl, when is it going to come back? I don't know. I'm just like jumping around. I feel so light, but when is it going to come back? This can't possibly last. And it's been about a year now and it's still gone. So yeah.
It's so fun to talk about this stuff because to me, this is more real than a lot of the other BS that you hear out there. But when you tell people what you do, you know, they think you're crazy or something, you know what I mean? But this is how you heal. This is how you really figure out your issues and get over it. And, you know, you're worth healing out there if you're listening to this and learning things. So that was amazing. I'd like to just kind of bring it back a little bit to your book and kind of the voyage that you help people go through.
Yeah. So, you know, the book was written in 4 parts or 4 phases. And so I talked a little bit about the awareness and the second part, and each of these has 5 chapters. So it's a dense book, but it's easy to read because it's written in a conversational tone. It has a lot of neuroscience. There's a lot in there. But the first part is awareness, second part is insight. The third phase is alignment, because remember, we talked about you get out of alignment, that disconnect. And so now that we've had the insight, we want to get realigned and then integrate that, make sure that the roots take hold, that you're actually creating the new patterns and habits that align all of this. So it becomes your new reality. It's long-term. It's not like a short-term gain. And that is the same process that I then applied to the voyage past self-sabotage. And I had a few people in there that will say, but I want to just get to the end. I want to get to the end. And I say, no, we need to go through this one by one. And each time it's like aha moments. Okay, I got it. And at each stage, the breakthroughs were happening exactly as they were meant to, in alignment. You can tell exactly where they start to happen and how people's lives are changing. But, one of our entrepreneurs who, stepped into a meeting that normally he would have just had so much anxiety about, excited, curious, just went back, put together a proposal and thought, I probably should ratchet this down. I'm not worth this. And then he thought, no, I'm definitely worth this. I mean, these people are going to be, and he said, I wasn't just saying this to myself. I really felt it. There wasn't that disconnect. Like, I'm really worth it. I mean, these people need me. I'm going to change their business. And these are the kind of breakthroughs. So it's important to go through that process. It's on purpose. It's not haphazard. I'm going to just get a bit of this and a bit of that.
Yeah.
It builds.
there's steps to it.
Mhm.
Just real quick, let's go a little bit more into alignment. How do you think people can find alignment or just get their lives back into alignment if they're out of whack?
Yeah. So I want you to have a picture now. I want you to imagine a circle, right? Like a circle in the middle of us, just below you. And I want you to imagine a pendulum swinging over that circle and just rocking gently back and forth. That's what I call the healthy zone. It's an adaptive zone. That pendulum doesn't just stop. We are systems, we're dynamic. Things are changing in our world. Our bodies are changing. And so things are going to rock that pendulum, but it should just rock gently. And that means as things happen, we adapt. We adapt, our bodies adapt, our minds adapt, and we are living a healthy life. When that pendulum starts to swing out to the side, we're in this maladaptive territory. And that's where most of us live. And that's where we've started to normalize things. And that's also why sometimes we feel like as soon as we're trying to get healthy, we let the pendulum swing all the way to the other side. But we're still in maladaptive zone. We need to slow that down and get it into this rocking area where we're adapting really well. So if somebody's feeling really out of alignment, you want to start to look at, I have this whole thing called the life wheel that I take people through that goes a little deeper. I have different assessment tools, so I bring them through to assess, where am I out of alignment? Is it my physical health? Is it my emotional health? Is it my financial health? Is it in my relationships? And it could be a little bit of all three. And we start to see where it is. And that's where you focus. I'm never going to say, hey, you all need to focus on your finances. That's all that matters, because your finances could be great. You could really be a 5 and doing great, and someone else over here could be a 2. And, so it really depends on you. But then we start to work on that. And there are some other assessment tools to understand, how is the behavior showing up? Is it perfectionism? Is it people pleasing? Are you overcompensating, superhero stuff? Are you savior? I have this whole framework for this, but what are you doing? And how is this showing up in your life? What are the observable behaviors? And what are the ways that you're self-sabotaging? And then we work on those things with those exercises, but we also do the inside out. So we go in and I work one-on-one with people, but I also have this meditation for people where I guide them and they can listen to it and go back in on their own as well. And some people just do both. Some, do just the one or the other, but it allows you to go in and start to say, this is where I need to do it. But you have to do the work.
Yeah, that's how everything is.
Yeah. And it's not hard work. It's like getting a good workout. You know how you go and you do a good workout and maybe you have every excuse not to go to the gym, but then you go and you come back and your muscles are a little sore. You got a good workout, but you feel stronger and you feel better. And you're proud of yourself because you did it. Right. You see your body change.
I'm still thinking about what you said. I love the pendulum metaphor for life, and because you don't want to swing wild. That's how a lot of people, every now and then they're in alignment and then they go way out. So you want to minimize the swing, because we're never going to stop the swing of life or whatever. Things are going to happen, but if you can get it more centered and focused, that's very powerful. Wow, you've taken me on a journey for this episode, so I really appreciate it. And I love the voyage past self-sabotage. That's such a good name. So who's kind of like your customer avatar for that? Is it, entrepreneurs? Is it everybody? Is it just people that are suffering from self-sabotage? What's it?
Well, right now it's been entrepreneurs. And I think entrepreneurs are, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur. This is actually my 4th venture. And I've been in the corporate world. But I can work with pretty much anyone. It's usually going to be tied to a business case. It's somebody that wants to, increase their income and their impact in the world and their peace of mind. And so you can be in the corporate realm as well. In the corporate realm, I call that an intrapreneur. Maybe you're not signing the front of a check. Maybe you're signing in the back of the check, but are you going into the business world and looking at someone else's business as though it were your own business? And are you putting your whole self into that? So, and I don't mean whole self, because I do believe in work-life balance, but
that's cool.
Yeah.
I love it. So I have two questions that I kind of ask everybody that comes on the show. But before we get there, where are you kind of most active on social media, or where can people find you? Is it go to that course? Like what's the best website to kind of get into your world for anybody listening out there?
Yeah. So I'm easy to find if you know how to spell my name. It's Cheryl's with an S.
Mhm.
So it's Sheryl, and Anjanette. So if you know how to spell my name, my website is SherylAnjanette.com. LinkedIn, I believe I have a hyphen, Sheryl-Anjanette.com, or at Sheryl Anjanette. Sorry, for LinkedIn. Instagram at Sheryl Anjanette. I'm probably most easy to find on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And we'll have all those links in the show notes. So anybody
Yes.
listening, definitely go check those out. So the first question that I ask everybody that comes on the show is, what motivates you? What really kind of fires you up? What gets you going?
I'm really motivated by people that are happy. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. It's more than that. I'm motivated by people who are always working on themselves and doing better and having breakthroughs. I'm motivated by myself when I do that.
Yeah.
And I'm motivated by people that are really kind and loving and are open to, new perspectives and new ways of thinking.
I love that answer. That's wonderful. And then the second question that I ask is, the keyword is kind of impact. So it's kind of like, it's a general question, but what is a habit that you've started that has really kind of had an impact, or a discipline that you've done that you've seen, like, since I started doing this, I can actually see things that happened in my life?
I've been showing up more visibly.
I like it.
I'm definitely an introvert. So a lot of people hear me and they wouldn't believe that, but I'm an introvert. One of my companies was a marketing agency, and I had it for close to 20 years. And I'm really good at holding other people up and putting other people in front. But I needed to learn to show up for myself, to be visible on audio platforms and social media platforms and speaking. And it wasn't comfortable at first, but it's really made an impact and
Cool.
in my life.
Well, that's a great insight. Be more visible, get out there and show people how awesome you are. Well, we've definitely gone on a journey. I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Any last thoughts kind of before we wrap it up?
If you're listening to this and you're wondering if you have imposter syndrome, or you're experiencing, I should say, don't own it. But if you're experiencing it, or how you are, I just want to remind you that you are good enough. In fact, you're more than good enough. You're great. You're worthy. You are deserving. Your voice matters. We need your voice, and you matter. And you are worth working on you. Show up for yourself.
You're worth healing. So amazing having you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming out. Thanks everybody for listening. This was a great time. So be sure to share this with somebody who might need to learn more about healing themselves, or getting over self-sabotage, or any of the amazing things, imposter syndrome, that we talked about today. Leave us a comment, and definitely reach out to Sheryl and get into her world and say hello. All right. Have a good one. Talk to you in the next one.